Welcome to the Undiscovered Gems podcast, hosted by NBA legend and business powerhouse Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Undiscovered Gems. I'm Charles Smith, and I'm your host, and today we have Paul D. Bekman. Paul is a legal professional from Baltimore, Maryland. He's a trial attorney, and all of you know, if you're going to be a trial attorney, you have to be tenacious, and you have to have drive and will to win your cases. And we're going to talk to Paul and find out what makes him tick. So, Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Charles. A pleasure to be here.
All right. So, Paul, we're going to kick it off, and we want to know all about you. Tell us about your practice and how did you get into being a lawyer?
Well, it's probably a story that's been repeated many times. People go to college, they decide what they want to do, or they decide they don't know what to do. But from the time I did go to college, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. There were no lawyers in my family, but you know, you watch the shows on TV, you go to the movies, you learn about being a lawyer, and that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up going to the University of Maryland School of Law. It was a terrific experience, and I joined a law firm right away, and I had been a lawyer for less than 30 days, and the firm was a trial firm, and they said, Paul, I'm going to give you these two cases. They're two jury trials, and look, they're losers. Don't worry about it. But I want you to go out there and I want you to get experience in trying a case before a jury. So I took the two cases, I worked like a dog, and I won both of them. So I was hooked. That was the first year. And in today's world, that just won't happen. But it happened to me early on.
Wow. Why would you say they were? I mean, obviously, if they say they're two losers, that means the deck is stacked against someone if you're going to go in saying that, and they see no possible way for you, 30 days being a trial lawyer, to even go in and do that.
That's right.
So how'd you do it, Paul?
I did it the way you did it and the way others who have succeeded did it. They had perseverance, which is probably the most important trait of a trial lawyer. You can't give up. If you're going to go into a fight, you're going to go into a fight to win. You don't have to be a jerk to do it. You can do it in an understated way, but you've got to have perseverance and never give up.
That's awesome. And after you won those two, what happened afterwards? What was the look on their faces? What did they say? What happened to you from that point forward?
They said, we've got somebody here. We're going to give him this trial work to do. And I started out and I tried a lot of cases. I think I've tried about 150 jury trials, at least that number of non-jury trials, plus arbitrations, all types of hearings. And just like anything else where people work, you have to love what you do. And I love what I do. I teach a lot. I teach at the law school. I lecture a lot about litigation, trial tactics, how to succeed, what to do, what not to do, pitfalls. And it's helped me be a better lawyer.
You know, you mentioned something earlier. You said you were younger and you watched a lot of TV shows. Growing up, there are a lot of court shows, detective shows, in the 70s and the 80s. What were your two favorite shows and why?
Well, I really liked Perry Mason.
Did you?
He won every case. You know, he never lost a case. So that was an example of what you have to do to go the extra mile to win the case. And that was certainly one of my favorites. And then there are all kinds of movies, you know. I remember the movie with that was actually filmed in Baltimore involving Al Pacino, Justice for All. It was a great movie. It's maybe outdated, but you got to do it the hard way. You got to work at it, and if you work hard enough, you will be rewarded.
Who are your mentors? Who did you who taught you the ropes, and who did you pattern your 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 work ethic and how you go about it? Who are
Well,
those people?
the interesting thing about that, Charles, is I mostly tried cases by myself. And the people
Hmm.
that I learned from were my opposition. There were a significant number of very, very fine trial lawyers who were defense lawyers. I do plaintiff's work. And they were fellows in the American College of Trial Lawyers, which is probably the most select group of lawyers in our country. It was created in 1950. You cannot apply. You have to be invited to attend. And these people were all fellows of the American College. I would go into their office. I would see the plaque on their wall, and the best lawyers, the ones who were out there, who were not afraid to try a case, were fellows of the American College of Trial Lawyers. And I became a
Hmm.
fellow in 1993. It's 40 years ago, a little bit more. And I served on the state committee. I chaired it. I was on the board of regents. I was an officer, and I'm still involved in helping lawyers become better lawyers.
You know, it's interesting you said that you learned from the opposition. I think that's what a lot of people do, and a lot more should do, because you pick up, if you're going against someone who you think is better, and even if they're not better, you can always learn from them if you're open to it. And it always gives you those extra little tools on your tool belt that you don't have. And so, would you say that you spent your career kind of going against people and seeing something that they did, and you're like, "Ooh, I need to take that one. That was pretty good. You got hit with a right hook, but you're like, I need to get that one."
You're absolutely right. And, I think for anyone who is going to be a lawyer, you've got to find your own cell. What is right for you? You don't have to copy somebody 100%, but
Right.
you, just as you say, you can learn from others. It's kind of like what you did, becoming a star in the NBA. You may learn more from your opposition than you learn from your fellows on the court.
That
And that's
exactly.
true in the practice of law. The traits are fairly common. The people who are not afraid to lose, the people who try to do what's best for the client and fight for the client. And you don't have to fight by yelling and screaming. You can fight by doing the correct thing in an appropriate way. And if you do that, you will have the respect of the client, you'll have the respect of the opposition, you'll have the respect of the court.
Paul, are there attorneys that you've gone up against, and when you see them and they see you, you automatically know, I'm sorry, you're going to take an L on this one? I mean, that
Yes,
when you see
but
them, you know, and they know
yes,
you're going
but
to
I
take it.
don't say it.
Of course
I don't
not.
say it. I'm there to do a job. I'm not there to, I've always said this about winning a case. You don't have to kill the opposition 6 times. You should focus in on the main issue in the case. Maybe there's a second issue, but there's a main issue in the case. And that's
Hmm.
where you put your effort. That's where you fight. And that is what resonates with a jury. You convert the complex to the simple so that it's understandable and it makes sense and it's reasonable. And that, I think, is a trait of a successful trial lawyer.
Yeah. What do you see in the court system today that's broken that needs to be fixed?
Well, we went through one of the most unusual periods that any of us will ever experience in our life when we went through the pandemic, which just struck out of the blue. The court system struck down. There were no courts. The courts were closed. And we ended up doing something like this. We ended up doing Zoom. Zoom was a savior. Zoom ended up where you could do depositions, you could do motions, you could do hearings, you could do arbitrations, and everybody became accustomed to it. But I would say this about our court system: nothing is perfect.
Mm.
From my point of view, what the court system has done is that it has opened the door to everyone, and everyone can participate, and everyone will be treated appropriately, and everybody will be able to seek justice. And that's what I have done or tried to do during my entire life as a lawyer. Do the right thing. Do it the right way. Treat everybody with consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do your job and do it with perseverance and do it with strength, but you can do it with humility as well. And I think juries recognize that. So my advice is for anybody who is going to be going into court is to check the person out who you are going to have representing you, just like you would check out a doctor,
right,
to make sure you got the best and that somebody has a track record and that somebody is not afraid to go in and fight for you. And I find that the really good lawyers are the ones who have that ability.
What was that gut-wrenching case that you lost, and what'd you learn from it?
Nobody wins all the cases. And there is not a lawyer out there that's won all of the cases. Sometimes you can do your best, and it can be a small matter that you really have no thought about, that the jury may come up with that might make a difference to them. But I've been very fortunate in my life. I haven't lost a lot of cases, but I can tell you this, it is heart-wrenching, particularly when you give it your all. But nobody, Charles, nobody wins all their cases.
Right.
But you learn more. You're right. You learn more from your losses than you do from your victories. The victory is over. Okay, we're on to the next one. But you also have to be prepared to know that there's sometimes you may not prevail, or you may not prevail to the extent that you want to prevail. Because in the cases that I handle, you're dealing with kind of catastrophic injuries, death, and it's a very, very robust area, and it's a very, very dangerous area to work in. You have to do it the right way.
Yeah. Paul, are you still learning today?
Every day I learn something new, no matter what it is. And it may be a little thing, but I learn every day. And if I don't do that, then I'm shutting myself down, because the world is changing every day. AI, my goodness, going to change the world. Yes, I learn every day. I try to learn every day. And I tried in the work that I do to teach other lawyers how to be a better lawyer and how to succeed and what to avoid when you're a lawyer. Yeah,
you mentioned AI. So technology impacts every part of our lives, every business. How is it impacting your business? Do you need to work with young people? Are they helping you using technology to make your job easier? How is that in your job, Dave?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, where we used to go to court and we have these big, giant diagrams, and we would bring them into court, and you'd have 5 or 10 or 20 different diagrams. Now, of course, you have TV monitors for the jury. You can speak to them with IT. You can show them exhibits. You can show them films. It's tremendous. And all of the courts, particularly the federal courts, have it. And if they don't, and we're in state court, we bring in our own equipment. We bring in our TVs. We bring in our panels for the jury, and we have them be able to see everything. And the court likes that.
Are you still growing your business today?
Fortunately, the answer is yes. And, my wife says to me, Paul, you've been doing this for a long time. Isn't it time?
Paul?
Isn't it time to stop? And I say, all your friends are retired. All your classmates are retired. And I say, honey, I haven't hit my peak yet. Why should I retire?
You haven't hit your peak yet. What is it? What drives you? Why is it the really just kind of digging in and the juices that flow to get the case going and to try to win? What keeps you going today?
From my perspective, Charles, If a wrong has been committed, it needs to be righted. That's what motivates me. And that is the most important thing, that people can get justice. And there's nothing more rewarding than winning a case when you know that that's the issue.
You mentioned earlier that you teach and you help others based on your knowledge and your skill sets and what you've gathered over the years. What are the areas that you see is most important for you to impart wisdom into the next generation of lawyers and the people that you're dealing with? What do you see coming in the future?
So I would say that one of the most important things is humility. One of the most important things is fairness. One of the most important things is you don't have to denigrate somebody to win your case. You can win it with style and with thought and with perseverance. And when you cross-examine somebody, you don't have to make them look like a fool, but the jury will know that you're right and they're wrong when they're not telling the truth. So it's an art, and it's important that lawyers understand that, and they understand what to do and what not to do. And I try to impart that when we talk about trial tactics, about how to avoid losing your case by doing the right thing.
So it's more like being over-prepared and win with class. You don't have to.
For sure. Yes.
You don't have to obliterate your opponent.
Yes, and for a lawyer, we're never over-prepared. We think we may be, but we're never over-prepared, because there's always something that comes up during a trial which perhaps you never thought would come about. And you've got to be ready to deal with it, and deal with it like you knew it was coming. It's like that right-hand cross that's coming across at you, and you're going to block it with your left hand.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're also an injury lawyer.
Yes.
And today's environment, insurance companies are all over the place. They're changing their rules. They're trying not to pay. You got the client and you got the insurance company. Are you actually going head to head with the insurance companies too now?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you're dealing with insurance companies who may actually be a party to the case, because there might be limited insurance, for example, in an auto case, and your client has what's called uninsured motorist coverage, and they may have an umbrella coverage. And that means you have to name that person as a party. Now, you tell me, if you name an insurance company who shall remain unnamed as a party defendant, you're going to get a lot of sympathy from a jury who knows that every insurance company that they've ever dealt with, they've had a problem with. So that is an opportunity for a lawyer to have a fair result and reasonable compensation.
So in the injury practice also, what are I'm sure you see a lot of injuries, but are there any consistent? Is it auto? What types of injuries do you see that are most prevalent? That at least the cases that you take.
Yeah, so they may fall into a bunch of different categories. They may fall into the automobile, truck, train, plane, boat. I've been doing maritime law since I started practicing. My firm, when I first joined it, represented the Seafarers International Union and the National Maritime Union. So we represented seafarers, longshoremen, harbor workers who may have been injured. And I've done that, my entire life. The amount of those cases has decreased because of changes in the law, but they're still out there. And I tried one this past year involving a longshoreman that had a very serious injury on board a vessel in the York River. So those cases go on. And in addition to that, there are medical malpractice cases. There are product liability cases where there's maybe a defective product. So they all can be involved in causing serious, permanent, total injuries, and unfortunately, in some cases, deaths.
Hmm. Is there a difference in the language in studying to understand maritime law versus law that's on the land?
Well, that's a very good question, and you're right. They call maritime law the law of the sea. And
Right.
once you step off that pier and you're on a vessel, the maritime law will control as long as that water is navigable waters, which has a specific definition. And there are a lot of navigable waters around that connect to the ocean and rivers. And yes, the law is different. For example, in a lot of states in our United States, there's a cap, there's a limit on the amount of damages you can recover. For example, for pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, emotional pain and suffering, damages for someone who may have died, mental anguish, emotional pain and suffering. There are no caps under the maritime law.
Wow.
The other thing that particularly applies to us here in Maryland is Maryland is one of 4 states in the United States that has contributory negligence, which means if you are hurt by negligence, but you're 1% at fault, you lose. You get
1%.
nothing. 1%, you're out. 4
Wow.
states, 46 states have comparative fault, where you can be 10% at fault. I'm
Hmm.
90% at fault and recover 10% of your damages. So the maritime law is pure comparative negligence.
Hmm.
Generally, there's another defense called assumption of risk, which generally does not apply in maritime cases where you intentionally expose yourself to a known danger. That does not apply in certain maritime cases. So yes,
Hmm.
you're right. Once you leave the pier, once you get on board the ship, the law is different and is actually more favorable to you than a lot of land-based law.
Did you have to all of a sudden seem like you're taking a new course or starting a new career once you started dealing with maritime law? Because it seems totally different. Like you're
Totally
starting.
different, and
Yeah.
I was fortunate to learn it early because of the people that the firm represented. They were seamen,
Ah,
they were longshoremen, they were harbor workers. So I learned at an early age all about maritime law.
right. Are there many lawyers that know both practices similar to you? I mean,
Not a lot.
yeah, it seems like you would stick to one side or another and build a practice, but you're doing both.
Yes, you can do both. And in handling these kinds of cases, you really have to know your law. For just to give you a quick example, a ship owner can limit its liability to the value of its vessel, even if there are significant injuries and deaths and damages, if the owner was not what's called in privity or knowledge of what was going on. Owner's not there, but somebody else is there. They can limit the liability to the value of the vessel, which would be
Mhm.
peanuts compared to what the damages are. So yes, they're right. You're right. There are a lot of little things about maritime law that are very important.
Have you ever had a case that dealt with both?
I had a case where there were people who said the maritime law did not apply, and I said the maritime law did apply, and it could make a
Mm.
big difference in the case.
Right, right.
You
Uh,
can see.
yeah, I say that because if it were an attorney that didn't have a dual understanding, um, yeah, that'd be a bit challenging. They'd have to
Let,
find someone else to be a
let
part of it.
me let me give you an example of something that people who may be listening would know. People sometimes go on cruises. You go on a cruise, the cruises that are all over the world. They're in rivers, they're on oceans, and some people may get hurt. Some people, may get very seriously hurt on board a vessel. And I can't tell you the number of times where I get a call from a lawyer who says, Paul, I've got this maritime case. I know you do maritime law, and I really want to get your opinion about what this case is worth. So the first question I ask is, what happened to your client? And then, how long ago was the incident? Oh, it was only 2 years ago. I've got another year to go. But that's not true. Because in the passenger contract that you get when you go on board a vessel that's going on a cruise, they're going to have in there a statute of limitations of 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you're going to have to file your case in the Southern District of Florida. So I can't tell you the number of calls that I've gotten where statutes passed, and the only insurance carrier they're going to talk to is their own.
Wow. Paul, how do you look at the economics of what a case is worth? You said that, and I never knew that. Like, is there models are you looking at other cases to get the models? How do you come up with that?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's particularly important in medical negligence cases where someone may be the victim of medical negligence. And that is because the costs associated with bringing one of those cases is astronomical. And by that I mean well in excess of $100,000 it costs, and maybe $200,000 and maybe $300,000, where you may be dealing with brain damaged children, where the allegation is that, for example, they were not delivered timely, where they disregarded the strips that monitor the heartbeat of the child. It can be 10, 12 experts on each side. So multiply that out. It's It's tremendous.
Wow.
And that happens.
Wow.
And it can happen in the serious truck case, railroad case, airplane case, because of the number of experts you have, because the cost of experts has not gone down. It continues to go up. You know that.
Absolutely. Yes. And there are many young people that come into all sorts of careers with, like we mentioned, technology, with a new way of learning and trying things differently. And many are successful that change how the practices are done. Last two questions. One, do you work with a lot of young people?
I do. We have law clerks here during the summer and during the year who work with us. We bring on young associates who are just terrific and who work with us side by side and learn how to do it the right way. I mean, I think that's our responsibility as lawyers in training the next generation.
Nice. Well, Paul, I've learned a lot, and I can keep on asking you questions, but I see our time is running out. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk to the audience and your potential clients. What would you tell them about you and your practice today?
Well, what I would say to them is, and I'm not unique, there are a lot of excellent lawyers out there, but you should take time. Take time in selecting your lawyer. You watch advertisements, this lawyer is that, and this lawyer is that. But I would say to you, do your homework. What you see on TV in the way of advertisement may not reflect the most competent, experienced, intelligent, and lawyers with the most perseverance to handle your case. Do some checking. Check them out. And if that is the case, meet with them before you hire them so that you know that you're comfortable with the person that's going to represent you. Just like if you had a medical issue, you want to make sure you get the right doctor who knows what they're doing.
Nice. Paul, well, look, I see why you are a Diamond of the Decade lawyer. Your humility and professionalism is top notch. I think everybody heard that today. I've learned a lot. I want to really thank you for coming on the show today, imparting wisdom to me and the audience as well. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Charles.
All right. Take care.
You too.
We hope you enjoy this episode of Undiscovered Gems with our host, Charles D. Smith, highlighting today's best and brightest business minds. Brought to you by Pods Entertainment Group.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.